It's Reverend Ahmondra coming to you from a place where the original queens always speak their truth. And we are continuing today in our episodes for the series Black Women Building Success Through Transition. And like I said at the introduction, transitions are simply experiences that we have as we move from one stage of life to the next stage. And as we move through these stages of life, we are transitioning and we can learn lessons in those transitions that can help us in our future success. So before we jump into episode 5, program transitions, the journey, let's recap. So in episode 2, we looked at the automatic transitions, the transitions that take place in the darkness without us even knowing about them, like when our bodies transition as young women. Then we looked at in episode 3 those natural transitions, that time of life where we just want to dance through life. It's called childhood, where we want to play, we want to discover, and we have all these ideas that we arrive with, the idea called love, called joy, called happiness. And as we're dancing with our little suitcase, remember that suitcase is actually our mind. Other people start giving us gifts. They start giving us their concept of what life has to be. And after a while, our little bag, which is our mind, gets filled with a whole lot of concepts that have nothing to do with us. That all occurs during childhood. And then in episode 4, we looked at creative transition. It's my show. That adolescent period of time where we began to look around and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't have that idea. That idea was given to me. Or we begin to look at other people and say, they're not really walking their talk. We begin to take on identities of others during that creative period of time when we're struggling to find out who we are. Many times they say we are rebelling, when in actuality, we're just trying to push away all that doesn't belong to us so that we can discover our uniqueness in that special time of creativity. And today we are going to be looking at program transitions, the journey. What happens when we transition from adolescence into young adulthood? Now, two things could have happened in adolescence. You either created a whole new dance, you went into that little suitcase and you took out everything that didn't belong to you and you put everything in it that you wanted, and you are a unique being and you're living your life and you back into dancing the way you danced in childhood. That could have happened to you. And as you transition into young adulthood, you transition knowing this is who I am, this is what I want, and you feel good about yourself. And you're ready to take that new journey into life. You could have had another experience as you transitioned out of adolescence into young adulthood. You could have transitioned into young adulthood burdened down, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders because you did not have the opportunity to go into that bag and clean out everything in there that wasn't to be yours. You could be engaging in tasks that are way beyond your years. As Black women, many times as we transition out of adolescence into young adulthood, we are actually stepping into somebody else's program transitions for us. Our uniqueness, our passion, our joy is covered over because someone else says this is how your life should be. Either it's society saying it, or it's the family saying it, or it's someone close to us saying to us, this is how your life is to go. In my generation, when I came out of high school, I was expected to, number 1, get married, number 2, have children, number 3, raise those children and take care of my husband. And if I wanted to go to school, that was secondary. As a young adult, I decided I was not going to take that program transition. I was going to have my own way of being. And so I went to college. I got my own place. And unfortunately, tragedy struck my life and I lost my girlfriend. And after she was gone, I succumbed to that program transition. I did what everybody said I should have been doing all along. I got married and went into that lifestyle. But I never fit inside of that lifestyle. And as a result, I was very unhappy and very sad. And I lived that way for 10 years until finally, in desperation, I decided I have to step out of this program transition and create my own way. So once again, I found myself making the decision to step outside of what someone else was telling me to do and into what I wanted to do. As a result, I was able to create a life that I love. But I would not have been able to do that had I not reached into the transition that I had when I was in my adolescence and pulled out my strength and pulled out my perseverance and pulled out my commitment to wanting to have a different type of life. All that I needed to move forward was already inside of me, but I had to go and reach in and pull it out and use it so that I could move forward. Many of us don't have the opportunity to step outside of those program transitions. And we look up many years later and we find ourselves still yearning for that dream, yearning to accomplish what we didn't accomplish back when we were coming out of our adolescence and transitioning into young adulthood. Program transitions can also change us and rob us of our pure heart's desire. I remember when I was in South Africa, 10 months after that country had come out of apartheid, I was volunteering at a workshop and we had Afrikaans and we had Black Africans all in the same room. Afrikaans were the white Africans who held up that whole regime of apartheid. And this one Afrikaans stood up and started sharing about how when they were young and an adolescent, their best friend was a Black African. But as they got ready to transition into young adulthood, they were forbidden from having that Black African as a friend. And they were forced into that regime of hating Black people. But although their heart hurt because their best friend was a Black African. And when they stood up at that workshop, they apologized for the behavior that they had been exhibiting all their life. And it was because they were forced into a program transition. Many of us have been forced into program transition. There was a way of being that we are supposed to be, and we are forced to live that way, even though it goes against who we are. And years later, we find ourselves in spaces regretting how we lived our life. Simply because when we transitioned out of adolescence into young adulthood, we transitioned into what somebody believed we should be doing. Now, program transitions aren't always bad. Many times we find that that pathway that is there for us is a pathway that serves us. And if that's the case, we can still reach in and pull out strength that help us move forward in other areas of our life. But if we find ourselves stuck in an area of our life where we cannot create success, something is blocking us. It could be because we are living inside of a program transition. If you find yourself in a place where you just can't move forward on your job, you just can't find that right fit, it's possible that after you shifted out of adolescence and went into young adulthood, you went down a pathway that was not for you. Your uniqueness, your talents, your abilities might have been better used going down a different path. But because of that program transition that you were guided down, you went down that pathway. As Black women, many of us travel down pathways on a journey inside of a program transition, and we do not get the opportunity to express our uniqueness, to use all of our abilities, simply because we are going down a pathway that we did not choose. Many times we are inside of program transitions because of the circumstances around us. Maybe our family of origin, or maybe the fact that we married young or had our children at a young age, and we went down a certain pathway because that's what they said we should do. Program transition can sometimes hinder our success. So I want you to look inside of your life. And when you shifted into young adulthood, were you inside a program transition? And did you just follow that journey because someone said that's the journey you should go down? Did you have circumstances that kind of moved you down that journey? It is very possible that inside those program transitions that you existed in, that you journeyed in, there are gifts and blessings that you can pull out that can help you move forward in other areas of your life right now that are not program transition. And that's what we're going to be talking about in episode 6, conscious transition. It's looking at all the places that we've gone, all the behaviors that we picked up, all of the abilities that we haven't used, bringing them together and making a conscious transition of where we want to go to next. That's how we build success. That's how we facilitate success. We reach back into all those transitions and we pull out what serves us and we create consciously a new transition so that we can emerge out of that cocoon like the butterfly did with a totally, completely new way of being. Thank you for joining me this week. Your homework this week is to actually go back and look at yourself as a young adult and see if you were walking down the path of a program transition. Is that where your journey took you? Or did you create something unique? And that's where your journey took you. Whatever journey you took, whether it was programmed by somebody else or programmed by yourself, there are blessings inside of there that you can pull out and create a new transition called conscious transition. If you haven't picked up my book, please pick up a copy. The Uncrowned Queen Reclaims Her Throne When a Black Woman Breaks the Silence, and the accompanying journal. And also, don't forget, please send this video out to other sisters because it's time for us to begin to pull out of all the transitions that we've gone through everything that we need so that we can build success right here, right now, today. I look forward to being with you next week. Blessings.